It was 12:43 in the morning when I was ripped from my sleep by a sound that still chills me to the bone. It wasn't a gentle knock. It was a violent, angry pounding on my front door. The shouts came next, sharp and commanding. "Police, open up." My heart slammed against my ribs as I stumbled out of bed, completely disoriented and terrified. I opened the door to find two officers, their expressions grim, their hands hovering over their holsters. One of them immediately barked, "Sir, keep your hands where we can see them." I froze, my mind racing, trying to make sense of the nightmare unfolding in my own hallway. "What's going on?" I managed to stammer. The older officer's eyes were cold as he delivered the line that made my knees feel like they were about to give out. "Your wife reported you for domestic violence," he said, his voice flat. "She claims you assaulted her tonight. My wife, Emily." The words didn't compute. She had left just a few hours earlier, saying she was going to stay with a friend after a minor disagreement. It wasn't a big fight, just one of those silly tiffs couples have. I had no idea she'd gone straight to the police. I was utterly speechless, my brain unable to process the accusation. It felt like I was in a movie, playing a part I never auditioned for. The officers were looking at me like I was a monster, and all I could feel was a profound, sinking confusion. They took me down to the station, and that's when the surreal nightmare turned into a cold, hard reality. I sat in a sterile interrogation room, the air thick with suspicion. The lead officer slid a set of photographs across the cold metal table. My stomach twisted into a knot. It was Emily. In the photos, her face was a canvas of fabricated pain. There were angry red marks on her arms and what looked like fresh bruises coloring her cheek. Tears streamed down her face, her expression a perfect mask of fear and suffering. "She says you hit her after an argument about money," the officer stated, his tone leaving no room for doubt. Money. We hadn't argued about money. We hadn't argued about anything significant at all. My mind reeled. "She also says she's afraid to go home," he added, his gaze unwavering. My world began to spin. Every denial I offered felt hollow, like throwing pebbles against a brick wall. It was her tear-streaked photos against my frantic, confused words. My truth felt powerless against her carefully constructed lie. They eventually released me, pending further investigation. But as I walked out, they handed me a piece of paper that felt heavier than a block of concrete, a temporary restraining order. I couldn't go home. I couldn't go back to my own house, the one I'd built a life in. I was locked out, branded a criminal, and completely alone. Standing on the cold pavement outside the police station in the dead of night, I felt a wave of despair wash over me. My home, my sanctuary, was now a place I was legally forbidden to enter. My bed, my clothes, my entire life was behind that door, and I was on the outside looking in, treated like a threat. The next few days were a blur of cheap motels and frantic phone calls to lawyers. Each one told me the same grim story. In domestic disputes, the system tends to believe the accuser first. It's a he said, she said battle, and with her photographic evidence, I was already losing. My reputation was being destroyed. My friends were starting to look at me differently, and the whispers were following me everywhere. I felt like I was drowning, with no one to throw me a lifeline. Then, a tiny flicker of hope sparked in the darkness. As I was mentally replaying every second of that night, trying to find something, anything, to prove my innocence, it hit me. The cameras. A few months back, I had installed a state-of-the-art home security system. There were cameras covering the front door, the living room, the kitchen, every main area of the house. Emily had hated them, calling them an invasion of privacy. But I insisted, mostly for peace of mind when we were away. Now, that invasion of privacy might be the only thing that could save me. The system recorded everything to a cloud server, accessible only through my personal account. She wouldn't have known how to disable it or delete the footage. My heart started pounding again, but this time it was with adrenaline and a sliver of hope. I rushed to the public library, found a computer, and logged into my security account with trembling hands. I navigated to the recordings from that fateful evening, and there it was. The entire night, documented in crystal clear, high definition. I scrolled to the time Emily claimed the assault happened. The footage showed us talking calmly in the living room. There was no argument, no shouting, no physical contact whatsoever. In fact, at the exact moment she claimed I was attacking her, the video showed me sitting on the couch watching TV by myself while she was in the bathroom. I kept watching, my breath held tight in my chest. The footage then showed her leaving the house. She paused in the hallway, directly in front of another camera. She looked left, then right, checking if I was nearby. Then she did something that made my blood run cold. She took her own hand and slapped herself hard across the face, once, then twice. She then used her fingernails to scratch her own arms, leaving the red marks that were so convincing in the police photos. She practiced her crying, looking at her reflection in a small mirror before composing herself and walking out the front door. Her face a perfect portrait of a victim. I had it. I had the undeniable, irrefutable proof. It was all there. Her calculated, cruel deception captured for the world to see. It was time to clear my name. With the video files downloaded onto a USB drive, I felt a sense of power I hadn't felt in days. I wasn't just an accused man anymore. I was a man with the truth in his hands. My lawyer's eyes widened as he watched the footage. He immediately scheduled a meeting with the district attorney's office. Walking into that room was completely different from my first encounter with law enforcement. This time, I wasn't the confused, stammering suspect. I was there to expose a lie. We played the video. The room was silent, the only sound being the recording of Emily's calm departure, followed by her horrifying act of self-harm and deceit. The officers who had been so sure of my guilt just stared at the screen, their expressions shifting from certainty to shock. The prosecutor turned to me, a look of disbelief on his face. The charges were dropped on the spot, all of them. The restraining order was immediately rescinded. The district attorney even offered a formal apology for the ordeal I had been through. They informed me that they would now be pursuing charges against Emily for filing a false police report and perjury. The feeling was indescribable. It was vindication. It was relief. It was the weight of the entire world being lifted off my shoulders. I walked out of that building a free man, with my name cleared and my dignity restored. Going home for the first time was strange. The house felt different, tainted by the lie that had almost destroyed my life within its walls. Everything was exactly as I had left it, but nothing was the same. The experience taught me a terrifying lesson. Your life can be turned upside down in an instant by a single lie. It also taught me the power of truth and the importance of protecting yourself. Those security cameras, the very things my wife resented, became my salvation. They were the silent witnesses that spoke the truth when I had no voice. This ordeal is over, but the scars remain. It's a reminder that the truth is the most powerful weapon we have, and sometimes you have to fight to make sure it's heard. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've ever faced a situation where you felt unheard, remember to never give up fighting for the truth. Follow 4 more true stories. The next morning, my phone buzzed. It was my neighbor, Brandon. His voice was hesitant. "Dude, I don't know what's going on, and maybe it's none of my business, but Emily had people over last night." I gripped the phone tighter. "What people?" Brandon sighed. "It was a guy. He stayed for hours. I heard them laughing in the kitchen. Sounded like they were having a great time." My heart, which had been aching with a strange mix of confusion and guilt, suddenly turned to ice. It sank straight to the pit of my stomach. She wasn't a victim. She wasn't scared. She was covering her tracks. The image of her crying, the accusation, the restraining order, it was all a performance. But why? What was the end game? Was this all just to get me out of the house? The pieces started clicking into place, forming a picture I didn't want to see. The late nights she claimed were with girlfriends, the sudden distance, the arguments that came out of nowhere. It wasn't just a rough patch in our marriage, it was a calculated demolition, and I was the target. Then, like a bolt of lightning, a memory hit me. It was so crucial, so obvious, I couldn't believe I'd forgotten it in the chaos. 6 months ago, I'd installed a full home security system. We'd had a string of break-ins in the neighborhood, and I wanted peace of mind. Cameras, audio, every major room except the bathrooms was covered. The living room, the kitchen, the hallways. Everything. And the best part? The system was cloud-based. I could access it from anywhere. The app was still logged in on my business laptop, sitting right on my desk at my empty office. Adrenaline surged through me. I had to get there. I drove like a man possessed, my mind racing. This was it. This was either my salvation or the final confirmation of my worst nightmare. I burst into my office, threw my keys on the desk, and flipped open my laptop. Oh, my hands were shaking as I found the security app icon and clicked it. The login was still active. I navigated to the date of the incident, the night she claimed I assaulted her. I selected the kitchen camera feed first and hit play. My blood ran cold, then began to boil. There she was, Emily. At the exact time she alleged I was attacking her, she was in our kitchen. And she wasn't alone. A man was with her, a man I didn't recognize. They were leaning against the counter, sharing a bottle of wine, laughing. My wine, from my wine rack. Then he leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a friendly peck. It was a long, passionate kiss. They were clearly a couple. My wife and this stranger, in my home, celebrating my departure. But it got so much worse. I scrubbed through the footage, my horror growing with every second. After their little celebration, Emily's demeanor shifted. The laughter stopped. She looked at her lover, her face hardening into a look of pure determination. I watched, mesmerized and disgusted, as she walked into the guest bathroom. Just out of the main camera's view, but still visible in the hallway mirror's reflection. She picked up a makeup brush from the counter, and then she started hitting herself. On her arm, her face. She scratched her own skin with her fingernails, wincing with real pain but a twisted smile on her face. She practiced crying in front of the mirror, contorting her face into a mask of terror. It was a rehearsal for the police, for the judge, for the world. My stomach churned. This was pure evil. Then, the audio from the hallway camera picked up their conversation. Her lover's voice, smug and cruel, said, "Don't worry. He'll get arrested, you'll get the house, and then we're free." They laughed together, a chilling, triumphant laugh that sealed my fate. Or so they thought. I felt a surge of cold, clear rage. I downloaded everything, every angle, every second of footage, every damning word. I had them. The day of the court hearing arrived. The air in the courtroom was thick with tension. Emily sat across from me, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, a perfect portrait of a battered, terrified wife. She looked at the judge, her voice trembling. "Your Honor, I'm scared for my life. I'm afraid of what he'll do to me." Her performance was flawless. The judge looked at me with a stern, disapproving expression. I could feel the weight of presumed guilt pressing down on me. My lawyer, a calm and collected man named Mr. Davis, didn't say a word in my defense. He simply stood up, walked to the clerk, and handed over a small USB drive. "Your Honor, we'd like to present new evidence." The judge looked skeptical, but agreed. The courtroom fell into complete silence as the footage began to play on the large screens. First, the kitchen scene. Emily and her lover, kissing, drinking my wine. A ripple of murmurs went through the courtroom. Emily's face went pale. Then, the hallway footage. Emily in the bathroom, hitting herself with a makeup brush, staging the bruises, scratching her own arm. The gasps in the room were audible. Finally, the audio. The lover's voice echoing through the silent chamber. "He'll get arrested, you'll get the house, and then we're free," followed by their shared, sinister laughter. Emily's jaw dropped. The fake tears vanished, replaced by a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. She was caught. The judge's face was a stone wall. He watched every second, his expression growing darker. When the video ended, he slowly turned his gaze from the screen to Emily. His voice was low and dangerously calm. "Ms. Larson, you are under arrest for filing a false police report, perjury, and attempted fraud." Her lover, who had been sitting in the back, shot up from his seat and practically ran out of the courthouse like the coward he was. In that moment, Emily broke down. She began to cry harder than I had ever seen her cry in our entire marriage. But these weren't the tears of a heartbroken wife or a scared victim. They were the desperate, ugly sobs of a con artist who had just lost everything. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about our love or our life together. It was about the fact that her perfect, malicious plan had crumbled to dust right before her eyes. The police officers approached her, handcuffs at the ready. As they escorted her out of the courtroom, she shot me a look of pure hatred. In one afternoon, she lost it all. The false claim was dismissed. The house was mine again. The restraining order was thrown out. She lost the sympathy of the court and everyone who had believed her lies. And she lost the guy she was willing to destroy my life for. On top of everything, she was now facing serious criminal charges that could land her behind bars for a very long time. Moving back into my house was a surreal experience. The first thing I did was strip away every trace of her. Clothes, her pictures, her furniture, everything went. I wanted to erase the memory of her betrayal from every corner of my home. It took weeks, but slowly, the house started to feel like mine again. It became a sanctuary, not a crime scene. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I still think about that midnight knock on my door, the flashing lights, the cold accusation in the officer's eyes. The echo of that trauma still lingers, but now it doesn't fill me with fear or confusion. It reminds me of a powerful lesson I learned in the hardest way possible. The truth, no matter how deeply it's buried, always finds a way to the surface. And in the digital age, sometimes the most honest witness you can have is the one that's always watching. Cameras never lie. Thank you for listening to my story. It's been a long and difficult journey, but sharing it is part of the healing process. If you've ever been through something similar or just found this story compelling, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support means more than you know. Stay safe and always trust your instincts.